Hello, CS112. Today I'll be going over a quick solution to Lab 3, which has to do with branching with functions. Now, functions are a huge part of this course, so I will be going in a little more depth on how to exactly test and use functions while programming. So I'm not going to talk too much about what you needed to do specifically, but pretty much you needed to calculate the markup price for a fish given this table here, which will let you know how it will be changed depending on that specific month's markup and tax rate. Something else to note here is that you guys have more responsibility for this function where you actually have to validate your parameters. Now I will be going through this slower than usual because I want to show you guys exactly how to test pragmatically, which you guys should be doing. So let's just dive right into it. Now, what do I mean by testing pragmatically? Well, there are multiple steps to this function. For example, like I just mentioned, you guys are going to need to validate your input, and that's something you should always do right at the beginning of your thing. So first, I'm going to validate if it's a fish, and then a month, and then I'm actually going to test that as I'm going. So I don't just code up everything and then test it, and then you can't really tell where in your giant program the error is. So you want to do each of these small parts, test them, so on and so forth. So again, the first thing I want to do is I want to check, I'm just going to put a comment here that says error checks. And then I'm going to say if, see as I can't type, if a type does not equal fish, for now, I'm just going to return a string that says not a fish. So I do have the sort of test cases that they included down here sort of already typed up, so you guys don't have to watch me do that. But for now, I just want to test to see if I can detect if I'm getting good input or not. So I'm going to call this here, and I'm going to change this to mango. I'm going to save that with a Control S, and then I'm going to run it. And okay, so we're able to detect that it's not a fish. So I'm going to go ahead and change this back to fish just to make sure that it's just not always passing through. All right, no return value good because this is a fish, so there is no return value associated with that. So now I'm actually going to change this to the correct thing, which is entered animal, and the animal is incorrect, so on and so forth. And the next thing we need to validify is if we're in the correct month. So there are a plethora of ways to structure this code, but the way I'm going to do it actually is I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say if correct month, enter this code block. And then way down here, I'm going to say else wrong month. So it will look something a little like if, and then I'm going to have to type out every single month here. So if you want to skip ahead a couple seconds, I'd recommend that. So if month is equal to October, or copy and paste this. So we have October, that should be November, this could be December or January. So that's October, this is going to be November, December, and lastly, January. So if it is one of these, I'm going to enter here. So for now, let's return good month. However, if it's a bad month, if we're testing with a bad month, I'm going to say else. I'm going to return the string here saying entered month is incorrect. So entered month is incorrect. Okay, let's go ahead and save, and let's test that out real quick with, so first we're going to test it out with a good input, so October. So we should get a string saying good input here. So I'm going to say Python cat good month. Yes, that's exactly what we wanted. We want to enter this code block here, and let's enter a bad month. So let's go to March. I'm going to save and run that, and entered month is incorrect. So now we know that the first two steps are working. So now that we know that works, we can continue on with the actual calculations within our shield here, which is going to protect us from all bad months. I do want to mention two things before I start the calculations. One is, as you can notice, I probably went past the 80 character mark. So you can see this right here is column 79. The way you can get rid of that is you can just add a backslash and hit enter. This will compile and run the same way. Well, not compile, but this will run the same way. To verify that, I can just, again, add a random print statement. Save and run it, and as you can see, it still runs. It's not giving any syntax errors. This kind of just will squish your code to make it a little more readable in the 80 character limit. So now let us actually begin the calculation. So I'm going to just have, I'm just going to split them up nice and clean to have and accommodate for, October. I can't type while talking for some reason. Split them each up into their own months just to make sure I'm not doing any funny business. So if month equals October, what do we want to do? Well, we have our handy dandy table over here. So the first thing we want to do is make our base price. And it does say here taxes added after the markup. So that it kind of implies that they want it done in 2 separate steps or else your math will be kind of weird. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add that markup. So the markup is going to be base price. And since this is October, the markup is 8%, so I'm going to do times 0.08. And then I'm going to accommodate for the tax, which is going to be base price plus equals, and then base price times 4%, which is 0.04. Excuse me. So that will yield what the markup is going to be if the month is equal to October. So now we want to go down and just go ahead and plug and chug the rest of these numbers. So that's if it's equal to November. Then we're going to have another one if month is December. If month is January. So I could use if else's here, but I just want to be very, very clear on what I want to do. So I don't like how this is not in the same indentation level as it should be, and that might not be correct either. All right, that's fine, that's fine. Okay, so now, again, I'm not going to be typing this all out. So I'm going to copy and paste and just change accordingly. Now, doing that is obviously a risk in terms of, oopsies, I could accidentally forget to change something or not change something correctly, so on and so forth. So I'm just kind of crossing my fingers here. So November, and then November's rates are 10% and 5% respectively. So that's 0.1 and 0.05. October we have, or sorry, not October, this should be December. We have a base price of 0.12 for 12, and then 0.065 for the tax. And lastly, we have a whopping 18% markup price, as well as a 6.7, so that's 0.067 for the tax. Now, I do need to remember to change this to January. Hope there are no typos there. And well, yeah, so this should yield the correct results. So I'm just going to go ahead and uncomment these and hit Control S, and then let's go ahead and run this bad boy. And uh-oh, I made a silly error there. And you can see a bunch of nones here. I'll go ahead and fix what I did and then explain what's going on real quick. I actually need to return a string, right? It wants a specific string. So it wants final price is, so I'm just going to make a string here saying final price is with a $sign. Then I'm going to concatenate it to the string version of the base price, because we're altering the base price here. So I'm just going to save that. I'm going to run it again, and there you go. So you can go through and verify yourself that these are indeed the same outputs, but the reason that before it just was printing none is because what each of these function calls are doing is you're printing out the return value of the function call. So a lot of you guys will just have like this part here, like you'll just have this out on its own, and you'll have none of this stuff, and you'll just hit run and nothing will happen. Well, that's because it is still calling your function and doing work in the background, but since we're not printing anything, nothing will happen. If instead of you were returning these strings, you were printing these strings, sure, you would see something, but returning something and printing something are two completely different things. And we want you guys to start returning things from your functions. Something else to notice or to point out is if I was to move even one of these bad boys above where we defined our function, it's going to start yelling at us saying calculate price is not defined. A way that the Python interpreter starts reading a file is it starts from line 1, goes to line 2, so on and so forth. And when it gets to this line, it's going to say, okay, you You want to print the function call to calculate price. Well, it's going to be like, well, I've never seen calculate price before in my life, and because it's true, because it's only seen these lines above here. So you do want to have all your function calls after you've actually defined the function. If you have any questions at all about running or testing or anything about these, I strongly suggest you ask as soon as possible, because this is not a thing that you should take your time in learning.